Teacher Jeffrey here. Welcome to our topic homeostasis. This time I would like to recognize the work of my students. Let's go and dive in now.
Hello and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you watching. First up, thank you so much for being here. My name is Ryan, and along with Adam, Hazel, Chandra and Hakim, we will be talking about thermoregulation, the losing of heat. What is homeostasis? Oh, wait, that's not what we're here to talk about now, is it? Well, I thought it would be a good idea to talk more about homeostasis first. Why? Because these two topics are so closely related that it's pretty hard to talk about just one. See, thermoregulation is just a small branch on the huge topic homeostasis. So it's definitely a smart idea to learn more about homeostasis first, as it would serve as an advantage when we talk about thermoregulation later on. With that being said, let's move on to thinking about what exactly is homeostasis. So as for the definition of this word, let's make it short, shall we? The maintenance of a constant internal environment. That's all you gotta remember. Homeostasis is a process which ensures that the composition of the body fluids is kept constant, and it involves negative feedback, meaning your body reacts oppositely to the changes. Alright, so now let's move on to the subject of our video, thermoregulation. Starting off with two of the most asked questions. What is thermoregulation and why do we have to thermoregulate? So to answer the first question, heat is produced in your body and lost from your body all the time. We all know that, don't we? Your body needs to balance heat production and heat loss to maintain constant internal temperature. Moving on to the second question, why thermoregulate? And to answer this, we have two significant answers. Here comes the first one. It's because environmental temperature keeps changing. And the second answer to the question is the fact that body cells need to be kept at a constant temperature, as we all know. Well, for further understanding, you can take enzymes as an example. See, if you expose enzymes to a temperature that it can't handle, it eventually will denature, which can cause catastrophic consequences to the body. Alright, so now that these two questions have been answered, let's move on to another subtopic for today. Ways our body can lose heat. So this is a very easy subtopic to memorize because we all know the answer to this. Heat can be lost through your skin by radiation, convection, and conduction. So the second method is the evaporation of water in the form of sweat from the surface of your skin. Heat can also be excreted in the form of feces and urine. And whether you know it or not, we exhale heat every single day when we exhale carbon dioxide. So, now that we've seen ways our body can lose heat, we therefore should be able to regain the heat and bring our set temperature back. In order to do so, thermoregulation should take place. But before we get further into the process, let us take a moment and all identify the structures involved in the process and their roles. Structure number 1, the blood vessels in the dermis layer. More specifically, the capillaries and arterioles. Basically, the contraction and dilation of your arterioles in the form of vasodilation and vasoconstriction helps to regulate body temperature. Hair. We've all been through that one moment when our hairs stood up on that one tingling goosebumps moment. Well, to explain more, this happens when the hair erector muscles attached to the hair follicles contract. Afterwards, the hair's coat stand on their ends, end coat, and skin around the hair is raised, producing, coat, goose pimples, end coat. in humans. Sweat glands. This structure technically produces sweat, which is also an indicator of the environmental temperature. The sensory receptors. These structures are found in the skin, acting as a sensor to pain, pressure, and temperature changes. However, there is a specific receptor designed to sense temperature changes known as thermoreceptors. Last but not least, the subcutaneous fat. These fats act as an insulating layer, reducing heat loss. Alright, so now that we know the cycle of thermoregulation and the structures involved during thermoregulation, we are clear to discuss what the stimulus and the receptors are. But why? Well, if you noticed earlier, sensory receptors was actually one of the structures involved during thermoregulation. And what exactly is a sensory receptor? Well, to understand that, we need to know what a stimulus is. It's something or a condition that evokes a specific functional reaction in an organ or tissue. So in other words, it's basically a tingle or a response that your body has to its surroundings. So how does this relate with thermoregulation? Well, see, there are two stimuli that can cause thermoregulation to occur. It's either by gaining too much heat or losing. And now that has been said, what is a receptor? We saw the word sensory receptor. Sensory is basically the stimulus, so the sense there is the stimulus. And what is a receptor? Well, it's basically an organ or cell able to respond to light, heat, or other external stimulus and transmit a signal to a sensory nerve. So in our case, we're discussing about thermoregulation. And what is the receptor able to detect the surrounding temperature? Well, it's called the thermoreceptors, just like what has been discussed earlier on. And where are they located? Well, they're located both in the hypothalamus and the dermis of the skin. Alright, moving on to slide number 8. The target organ and the changes in your body. So we discussed a bit, so we scratched the surface of the changes in your body, what's going on and all. But we'll talk more about that later. But first up, the target organ. So the main functioning unit of this process is the skin, as the structures involved are mainly at the skin. Another organ or part involved in thermoregulation is the hypothalamus. Why? Because it serves as the control center. Now let's take a look at the changes in your body. So the first corrective mechanism that happens throughout thermoregulation is the constriction of your skin arterioles and dilation of shunt vessels so that less blood flows through blood capillaries in your skin. This in turn reduces the heat lost by convection, radiation, and conduction. Number 2, the sweat glands become less active, resulting in decreased production of sweat. As less water in the sweat evaporates from the surface of your skin, less latent heat of vaporization is lost from your body. The increment of metabolic rate to increase the amount of heat released within your body is also another corrective mechanism. Lastly, when the above reaction or the increased metabolic rate method does not work or are not sufficient to prevent a drop in body temperature, shivering, a reflex contraction of your body muscles occurs. This spasmodic contraction helps to raise your body temperature back to normal. So the main purpose of this slide is to clear out any confusions present and also to give you a brief summary on what thermoregulation is. So we have a cycle here, which is the briefest and most explanatory cycle that you could ever find to show us or to clear out our doubts or clear the path of confusion for us about thermoregulation. So what happens during the process? At first, the body has a set temperature, which happens to be 37 degrees Celsius. So what happens afterwards is that, like what we've discussed earlier, the body loses heat in one of those ways. And once it's lost its heat, the stimulus or the sensory receptors in the dermis of your skin detects the absence of heat in your body, and a message is sent to the receptor saying, hey, look, the heat in your body has been lost, most of it has been lost, so you better thermoregulate in order to adjust and balance the heat present. So the thermoreceptors in the hypothalamus gets this message and processes it, and eventually initiates or kickstarts the corrective mechanisms as discussed earlier on. So these four changes are carried out, these four corrective mechanisms are carried out, and once it's all done, we have a successful thermoregulation process or procedure. And once it's successful, the temperature increases back to its normal state, eventually giving the body equilibrium. By now, I'm pretty sure, I believe that all of you watching has a basic understanding on the losing of heat in our body and how our body adjusts the heat with the help of thermoregulation. So before the video ends, let's have a short summary, a recap, a reflection on what we've learned. So in the very first slide, we talked about how thermoregulation is basically a process of homeostasis. And other facts of thermoregulations are that it controls our body temperature, and it's a negative feedback process. And we also discussed about the ways our body can lose heat and how most parts involved in thermoregulation are from the dermis of the skin and the hypothalamus, and the corrective mechanism that takes place during thermoregulation. We took a very deep look into it and how the body brings the temperature back to its normal or set point eventually. So bear in mind that we just talked about the ways our body can lose heat and how it brings the heat back with the help of thermoregulation. Alright, thank you so much for watching and being here on this channel. So before we talk more, we would like to address all references and citations, sources of information that were found on the internet, that we found on the internet. And if it weren't for these websites, this video would not be possible. So, with that, thank you so much once again for watching, and we hope you enjoyed our video. And consider this as a request, but before we end this video, please do go to our featured channels and click on Teacher Jeffrey, who happens to be our biology teacher. So, see, he has a YouTube channel and is filled with informative videos. So if you want to pass your bio test, make sure to subscribe to his channel and check out his videos. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. With that, goodbye.
This ends our topic for today, maintenance of the internal environment called homeostasis. The group discussed about losing of heat, which is under thermoregulation. This is Teacher Jeffrey. A goal without a plan is just a wish.